Gracie and I sat down for a long time and we talked about all of the things about being medicated. And I'm going to pull out a highlight reel for those that only have less than 20 minutes to listen to. But if you want to listen to the whole deep dive conversation, you can listen to the deep dive episode that really gets into the nuts and bolts of what it is that we're discussing today. So let's break it down into a couple of different points that we're going to discuss. I like what you say. Number one is when you get a diagnosis, it's not your entire personality.
Don't let your diagnosis be who you are, because you're more than your problems.
Okay. And number two, maybe we could focus number two on the parents of someone who's gotten a diagnosis or a caregiver of someone who's gotten a diagnosis. Mm. Is that a good?
No, that's really good.
Okay.
It's just as important, especially for young kids.
So I actually started this podcast with being medicated with Dr. Larson. So Dr. Larson is a double board certified child psychiatrist who is very knowledgeable and has been working in care patient clinics. He's started his own practice, and we've kind of been along that journey the whole time with him because we've known him over a decade now. And so we have a ton of tips from Matt Larson. So he's going to go into like the doctor side of being medicated and what that is. And as we started that podcast, one of the first things he said is there's very few medication. One of the first things he said is there's very few diagnoses that need daily medication in order to be alive. And one of them is type 1 diabetes. And I was like, oh, we know a lot about that. That's what we got.
It's in our butter fridge.
It's in our butter container in the fridge. So insulin for type 1 diabetics. And there are some other, but it's just a handful. Everything else are these synthetic drugs that help you to cope with life and help you to succeed in life. And with two different things. It's all about how you feel and it's all about how you function. So with those things, that's what Matt and I are going to talk about.
Yeah.
But so go listen to that podcast if you want to hear it. It's the Be Medicated with Dr. Matt Larson. But with you, I want to talk about from your perspective as you've had this diagnosis for 10 years, and we're going to talk about it in two different ways. The first one of your diagnosis doesn't define you.
No.
And the second one of being a caregiver of someone with a chronic illness.
And I think it's more than just caregiver. I think it's also just support for someone with a chronic illness.
Oh, I like that.
Because there's only so many caregivers that you have in your life, but everybody can be a support. And that's the main problem that I've seen with understanding diabetes.
Let's bring in the top 5 strengths, because your top 5 strengths and my top 5 strengths are very different.
Yeah, a little bit.
Which I'll pause here for a second. I do consulting for families with strengths. It's a strengths-based consulting, and we as a family have sat down and done it. And Gracie, you're so kind to do that, and we learned.
I love it.
We learned a lot about how you and I are so different. Do you know your top 5 off the top?
Okay, my top 5. Context, relator, intellection, ideation, and empathy.
And my top 5 are futuristic, strategic, achiever, responsibility, and communication. And on here, like you're not going to be able to see it, but on here, there is a chart that compares us with this power partnership that we're able to do.
Yeah.
And the longer the line, the farther apart we are. And we have a lot of long lines. We do have communication is pretty close for both of us. Ideation is pretty close for both of us. Maximizer and arranger are pretty close for both of us. And then
my futuristic is like 22. Her context is like 30.
Yeah.
It is the farthest to farthest.
Yeah. So what I like to explain to people is Gracie and I, we like stand back to back to each other. I only think about the future. She only thinks about the past. And here we are standing back to back with each other, trying to figure out the current moment. So this consulting with Clifton Strengths is a great way to figure out how to communicate with your kid, because in the app, I love it has the what I bring and what I need, And then I can select on Gracie and what she brings and what she needs. So, for example, Gracie needs an understanding of the link between the past and the future. And I need a forward looking focus on what could be. So we are just so opposite. And I love that. And I've actually really leaned into that as you have left the house. And as we've had these conversations, when you call home or when you come home to visit, it's been a really interesting way for me to step back and say, like, how can we help each other with our strengths?
Yeah. Because it's hard to, like, see the big picture one way.
Yeah.
Or living with each other.
Okay, so let's get into the first point, this deep dive discussion of your diagnosis does not define you.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So it's funny because I have been writing essays for scholarships, and this is my main point. This is my main selling point because
diabetes
is like my life. I don't know if you know this or not. It's kind of impactful. It's a little intense.
A little bit all-encompassing at times.
Yeah. And people with type 1 diabetic make around 180 times more health-related decisions than people without diabetes. So
I would even challenge that is probably higher than that. And then let's add on top of that, you are also diagnosed with celiac.
Yeah, so it's the 180 decisions is just correcting because, like, I can't, like, yesterday I went and played games with the family, and I can't have my phone next to me because I'm always checking it because, like, if I feel off, I'm like, oh, is my blood sugar dropping? Or, oh, am I going high? Like, the 180 is just manually clicking things in or manually changing your site. It's not talking about the 24/7 hum in the back of your head of, like, what's my blood sugar? What's my blood sugar? Do I feel weird? Love my diabetes, regardless of what people say. I get people coming up to me, especially right now, because I was just in the hospital. They're like, "Are you feeling okay? Like, that was so scary." And I'm like, "It was scary, yes, and it was intense, but also in the hospital."
Wait, do you want to tell the story of how you ended up in the hospital? Yeah.
And so I have had this perpetual cough that's just won't go away, and it was dry cough. So then I went to the doctor in urgent care after.
Which wasn't our normal doctor. It was a doctor down
in
your
Logan.
College.
He looked at my throat, and he was like, "You have this thing, and it's like post-nasal drip."
Well, and they said it's like cobblestoning.
Yeah, I got, like, blistering in the back of my throat because my immune system was fighting a sickness that was no longer there. And so it was just making my nose, which I'm like, go immune system. Thank you for. So he gave me a steroid and a cough medicine. And if you're type 1 diabetic or blood sugar, know anything, steroids are spike like no other. So on day 3 is when it's going to get bad, if it gets bad.
And Wednesday you were fine. Thursday you were fine. Friday you were fine. So then Saturday.
So Saturday I went down to Provo, and my blood sugar could not go down. Like.
And so you got there by noon.
I got there by noon.
So you were fine when you left. You'd filled up your pump.
I filled up my pump. All the things, and I normally go high when I travel too because, like, sitting in a car. So then I didn't eat very many carbs for lunch because I knew that, like, I'm going to let it go down, and I was drinking a lot of water, a lot of Propel, doing all the right things, and it just wouldn't go down. So then after lunch with my cousin, then we went to his thing, and my blood sugar was still, like, plateaued.
So we're high. Like HIGH, high, plateaued.
Which means 400 or around there, or above.
400 or above. Like,
which the normal range is 80 to 180. That's the normal range. So I was at, like, 400, and drank so much liquid. I was peeing every 2 seconds because trying to flush out my system. And so it went on like that until around 7 is when we went to dinner. And I got so sick because
this is when you looped us in.
That's when I started calling you because.
And you didn't have an extra site with you.
I didn't have an extra because it was only a day trip. You were supposed to be there.
Go down and back.
And what happens when you're high for that long is your blood gets acidic, and then your body starts eating itself.
And it's called diabetic ketoacidosis, DKA.
DKA, which everybody's worst nightmare. And so I was sick, like, And so we went to an urgent care. They said that they couldn't help us, and so we went straight to the ER.
And in the past, we've had similar scenarios like this, but you've been under my household in my life, right? In this town that we grew up in, that we have access to the doctor that we normally go to. So this is kind of like your first, I am an adult doing adult things.
Emergency.
Figuring out your own situation. And you're getting checked into ICU. And at that point, we're like, when you called at 7, we said, hey, we can come down and help if you want us to come down and help. And you guys said, no, we got this. We're okay. And we don't know if you're just going to go in and get fluids and then get discharged.
Because that's how it usually was.
Yeah.
Only the nurses in the ICU can handle insulin because it can go so wrong.
And we actually do know you are in the safest place that you could be.
Yeah.
Being in the ICU, they know how to take care of you. They're monitoring you closely.
It might be a little bit above and beyond overkill care, but I'll take it.
You got in. It was
so
actually
hard.
only moderate ketones.
Yeah.
And
because I had drinking so much water, I did all the right things. I kept flushing my system. I know how to get rid of ketones.
Yeah. So all of that to say, like, we just roll with the punches. Like, this is how it is, and it's scary. And like within any moment, you can end up in the emergency room within 12 hours. Anyways, so and let's come back to the point of, you did great. Garth ended up driving down on Sunday, and he stayed with you. You guys stayed there Monday. You got discharged on Monday.
Yeah.
So you got back in your apartment in Logan on Monday, and life resumes. Just like, that's life. You were out of ICU. Now you're back to normal life. And that's a really foreign concept to a lot, because this diagnosis is real special. So Tuesday, I did come down, and I came down for me.
Yeah.
And I know that, and I'm not a helicopter parent.
No, you're not, but you're a mom.
But I am a mom, and
and it's hard.
Oh, it is hard.
And I was fine. But you helped me a lot. You helped clean my room a little bit. You vacuumed it. You helped.
I did bring Granny Annie, and she's the kindest human that I know.
Oh,
she's one of
so
the best
sweet.
caregivers.
She's so sweet. And I miss you guys.
Let's talk about how diabetes doesn't define you.
Oh, I can't let it. It will kill me if I let it.
So what does that mean?
Chronic illnesses and depression and anxiety come hand in hand, because if your femur gets broken, you're just left out to die.
Yeah.
So we are not wired to constantly be thinking about our health. And I've learned what to look for. So I know when it's getting a little dangerous and stuff. But
you're saying the mental health side of the diagnosis.
No, I'm talking about the diabetes side of it.
Like the DKA side of the diagnosis.
Yeah, and I know when I start going high or when I start going low, and I always have a sight in my bag, and I always have 4 packs of fruit snacks, because going low is the worst, and being in the hospital is the worst.
I think you had a 5th grade teacher that really helped you with this.
Oh yeah, most definitely, because.
So I worked closely with the school, because I get to advocate for what you need.
No, you fought for me hard, it's a huge deal, because I can't be independent if you're constantly helping me. And diabetics need to have with a chronic illness, you need to have an illusion of independency, because.
Well, I don't think illusion is the right word, but I think that there's a safety net that you need to have.
Yeah.
So if your life is a tightrope walker, and it is, because you have to balance constantly. And you're tightrope walking with spinning plates that have to stay.
That are on fire. Yeah. It's so hard. And.
So we had a team at the school, and we could go on. I could do tons. I could talk for hours
and hours
about 504s and IEPs and getting your dream team is what I used to call it.
Yeah.
But the diabetic educated team that is there to care for you and what we do in emergencies.
But so this 5th grade teacher, she had it normalized. So my blood sugars was for everybody to see on the back of an iPad. But she also helped. She was the first teacher I had good grades in. She was the first teacher that I learned how to read with. Like, I actually was reading with. And I'm like, my art, I need to create because it's like, it's my escape. Hard.
So as a kid, one of the best advice I got when you were first diagnosed was, well, and it I can't remember exactly who gave me this advice along the road, but it was in these early years. And they said you have to talk about at least 3 things that are child related, not diabetic related, when you see her
Yeah.
first.
Which is hard because if I come home grumpy as like a 9, you're like, what's your blood sugar?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I could have had a bad day. My feet could hurt. I could be hungry. But immediately you go to, are you high or low?
Yeah.
Because
And
that's
usually
the norm.
it's not a question. Usually it's like, you are.
Yeah.
Like it's this statement
Which is,
as a parent.
Which
so
I still get that way. When I get grumpy or peevish.
Yeah. And like there's this fine balance again of like it doesn't define you. And so
But it is my day-to-day life.
It is your day-to-day life. And this is your diagnosis. It's not mine.
I talk about how I've built a community with my type 1 diabetes, and I've built so much of, I've learned patience, I've learned kindness, I've learned empathy. I know I have bonded with so many people, which I'm not a very people-y person, but I've bonded with so many people over illnesses because I understand more than a lot of people do.
But there are times where there are people that we love very much that have diagnoses that affect everything about them.
It shakes your whole life up. Everything falls over. You got to pick it all up.
And talk to somebody. Talk to a mental health provider. You can't pray it away. This is not something you can pray away. This is not something that you can drink apple cider cinnamon or I don't know.
Manifest it.
Yeah, manifest it out. And that's okay. And I know that you're going to hate me saying this.
Okay, say it. I'm ready.
But you openly sharing about the things that you go through help people to understand it.
That's why I love talking about it.
Even if they're not going through the thing.
I have taught so many people about things, not if they wanted it, but because I just love talking about it. It has been such a good thing in my life.
Communication is high on you, and context is really powerful.
And empathy is really high. I love helping people understand.
What advice would you give to 9-year-old Gracie?
Oh, that's a good one. I feel like there's a lot of things. Probably with diabetes related is that diabetes is your whole life, but it doesn't have to be your whole personality kind of thing. And it's not something you can avoid. And so you gotta kind of just accept it. Know that it's gonna be your whole life. It's not your whole personality though. Like you were more than diabetic. And know that like it's not the end of the world. Because any sort of diagnosis feels like the end of the world. Always. We don't like changes to our life and the way that we're living.
We don't like feeling weak.
And we don't like feeling weak. And that's just human nature.
What would you say to the mom of Gracie, 9-year-old Gracie? What would you say to her?
I'd probably just like, look at me! I'm not dead yet!
Oh my God.
Woo! We did it! We made it to 20!
Oh my gosh.
Because 9 to 20, that's 11 years. That's 11 years. I'm so old. And I'm out of the house comfortably. I'm doing great. I've made it so far, and a lot of it is because of you. And it didn't stop our family is another big thing. Like, we have continued on. Like, you have managed to care and love for all of your other kids. I've made it. And we have done so well. And my biggest problem right now isn't my diabetes. And when a diagnosis happens, your biggest problem is your diabetes. And you never can think, you're not going to get out. You don't think you're going to get out of that stupid whirlpool that keeps sucking you down. So I think that would probably be the biggest thing. I was like, my biggest problem right now isn't diabetes, because that's huge.
So I have one more question.
Okay, go.
What are you going to tell future Gracie?
Oh. Probably nothing diabetes related.
Okay.
Being an adult is hard. My concluding thought for being human is that life is hard. It's the short of the long, because life is hard. And it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be easy all of the time. But we have to be aware of what's our surroundings. You have to have something happen in your day that you noticed and can process enough that if your grandma called you, you could talk to her about it. And you have to remember that you're not alone. Everybody needs support, and us as a human race, we should be a support group for each other.
And that's why it is the top of the JOYrific chart.
It is.
Be helpful, be kind.
And
stop murmuring. Like, no whining.
No whining. Whining, there's a place and a time for whining.
Yeah, and you don't have your ears on, so figure out why it is that you're whining, figure out what it is that you need to address.
And sit with it, and then, because you also have the chart.
Caution sign.
The caution sign, and if you have been impaled, or your pancreas stops working, or you're just tired, or you're just hungry, you need to address those things before you can be helpful again. You need to put on your own life jacket before you can put on your babies.
Yes, put on your own oxygen mask before you put on your babies.
You need the support, you need the connection. And we need to help be vulnerable enough with other people and be human enough with other people that we can give them ways that they can help us.
I really enjoy listening to you and your perspective on things. You've taught me a lot. You're a good teacher. Whether I wanted the lesson or not is another story, but we're coming around.
I want the diabetes, so we're here now.
Be here and be human.
Be here and be human.
Thanks for coming, Gracie. It's been fun.